What's up everyone, Tyler Heupel here with Bass Journal Tips and Tackle. Today we're kind of fishing a traditional post-spawn bite. It's late May, there's still a few on beds, but most have started to move out, roam around, rest up. We're going to hit some deeper water today. We've got a variety of baits, but we're going to kind of go in depth on the Carolina rig. It's very effective this time of year, a little earlier this time of year, and a little bit later, all the way through the post-spawn. Very effective bait to locate bass. So we're going to kind of get in depth on some tips, tackle, the right setup, the right rod, line, everything that you need to fish a Carolina rig effective. I'm going to go out, try to locate some of these fish some deep points, some long shoals, some offshore stuff, some brush piles, maybe mark around, find a few and throw on them. But yeah, stay tuned, and we'll dive right into kind of some post-spawn fishing tactics, and then we'll get really in depth with the Carolina rig. All right, so let's go over some of the Carolina rig tackle that we're using today. We'll start down with the bait. So on the bait, we just got a 4-inch hula grub by Gary Yamamoto. It's kind of a unique bait. You can tell it's got a lot of appendages, a lot of action. It's kind of the perfect size for a Carolina rig as well. I don't like to get too big and I don't like to get too small. Something about this too with the action they seem to like. And what a lot of people pass up is that bass will spawn out on the main lake, like on shoals and the 4 to like 8 foot range. A lot of people are back in the creeks worried about spawning fish and everyone's on top of each other. But this is a great bed fishing bait. Now I don't mean bed fishing bait, you're gonna see one on a bed, you're gonna sit there and toss this, all this ball and chain rig going on a bed. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna sit on somewhere with a hard bottom, a lot of stumps, a shoal drags out, main lake, bass spawn on main lake, bass spawn everywhere. And this is a great bait to do that, and it was really effective for me this year. And then now work into the hook. So this is kind of a smaller hook. So my rule of thumb with the Carolina rig, this is just me personally, is I usually downsize about 1. If the bait can handle like a 4-aught, I'm using a 3-aught. If you can use a 3-aught, I'm using a 2-aught. So for example, this hula grub is fine with the 3-aught, but I like to downsize with this kind of, this wide gap 2-aught hook. It just seems the hookup ratio is better. Bites can be a little funny on a Carolina rig, and it seems like the smaller hook will keep, the hook towards the top of the mouth. We'll go ahead and talk leader. So for my leader line right here, this is 15 pound 100% fluorocarbon. That's important to have your leader just slightly lighter than your main line here. On my main line I'm throwing 17 pound fluorocarbon, and that little bit lighter line will let the bait sit up more and give it more action. Leader length too, that's a big one that you always hear about. Don't get too stressed out about leader length. Really throw what you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's only a foot, sometimes it's 2 foot. You can get crazy and go 3-4 foot. I tend to stay away from those super long leaders just because I'm more comfortable throwing something between 2-2.5 foot. Right here, this is probably about 2 foot of leader. And then really that, you're good with all depths. You can fish this shallow, you can fish this deep, you can cover all sorts of ranges. It comes to leader, keep it simple. I'd say just stay around, 2 foot, 1.5 foot, stay around that. If you want to experiment, you want to throw longer leader, you want your bait to be way out behind, your weights and stuff. Maybe you've got some finicky bass, you don't want that weight to be in sight at all. All right, so now we'll move, to the weight, the thing that you're feeling everything with. So you can go tungsten, you can go just lead. I don't think it matters too much. I throw tungsten just because it's a little bit of a smaller profile, but you're still getting that same weight. So the setup we have here, we're just going swivel, bead, weight. And so real important for the weights here is sticking to a barrel type weight. Those traditional kind of, like a regular Texas rig, like bullet weight, for example, it'll dig down and it'll get snagged in those stumps. This seems to kind of pull free from stuff a lot easier. Also, another really important thing here, and I know a lot of you that have probably thrown Carolina rigs have seen those like Carolina keeper things. It's kind of like a gold metal wire with weights. It's like pre-rigged. It's convenient, but you're really not getting the same action or the same feeling that you're getting when you're throwing this free weight. It hangs up a lot easier. If you're gonna throw a Carolina rig, I recommend just going through the trouble and doing this and kind of tossing those pre-rigs to the side. You're gonna get a lot more bites. You're gonna like what you feel better. Your bait's not gonna hang up. it's definitely worth, you know, just taking the extra time to tie one of these like this. So now we'll get down to more of the hardware, the reel and the rod. So for my rod, I like a 7.2 medium heavy. And so where it gets kind of interesting is the taper. So with a fast taper, you can really count rocks, you can count stumps, and sometimes you need that. The only downside with that faster taper is, you know, the Carolina rig, it has a tendency for the bass to kind of swallow the hook and, you know, gut hook them. And with a faster taper, you're feeling more, but for some reason, you seem to, when you set that hook, you're getting more of those deep hooked fish, and you know, we want to avoid that at all costs. There are times when that fast taper is definitely necessary and helpful. Like really, one of my favorite ways to fish the Carolina rig is literally counting rocks or counting stumps and dragging it super slow. But you know, you also have to be wary, you have to be ready for the bite, and you have to make sure that, you know, your line doesn't have a ton of slack in it. But then on the other end of that, you know, so this is a 7.2 medium heavy moderate fast rod, and with that it seems like your hook sets are a lot cleaner. Once your fish are pinned, they're pinned, and a lot less chance of it getting gut hooked. Whatever the reason is, I don't know for sure. It just seems like that moderate fast with a little bit of give really helps your hook set and keeps, you know, that fish hooked, you know, around the lips where we want them. We don't want gut hooked fish. We don't need fish bleeding everywhere, especially in a tournament situation. So my reel here, this is a 7-2 Shimano SLX DC. Whatever reel, doesn't matter. I just recommend a, you know, moderate fast to fast gear ratio, because when you're fishing a Carolina rig, you're going to have a ton of slack, and you need to be able to pull that slack fast and get a good hook set. A little more about baits. You can be really creative. This just happens to be one of my favorite. Really, I don't think anything beats just a traditional like Zoom lizard. You can throw, you know, flukes on the back of these, big worms, small worms, stick baits, creature baits, literally anything. You know, so maybe just kind of take into consideration, you know, time of bait, what forage the bass are feeding on, and you know, how they're positioning, their spawning, their post-spawn, their pre-spawn, and kind of adjust your size from there. So right now we're really in like a true post-spawn. It's late May, the water's in the mid-70s. This bait is great for this time of year. For, you know, prime for me, it's a little bit early. It's when you kind of got that time of year, you know, here in Virginia, for example, in the east, you've got fish doing everything. You've got pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. That seems to be a great time to throw Carolina rig. Secondary points, shoals, brush piles, because you've got fish everywhere and you're gonna catch all sorts of fish. You know, for example, many times this year I was fishing a shoal with a Carolina rig and I was catching bass that were definitely pre-spawn, white as could be, fat, and then the next cast, you know, you would go and catch a post-spawn fish on this shoal, all spawned out and skinny and just looking like it was, you know, kind of resting up. It's really versatile. You're gonna catch all sorts of fish. It's a good little rig all year round. And you know, so today what we're doing, we're post-spawn. We're kind of like in this weird area. They're more chasing bait, so it's not prime Carolina rig, but we're just gonna go kind of find some fish, maybe some secondary points where they're posted up for, you know, done spawning. We'll go find some long main lake points. We'll go fish some shoals with it and see if we can get a bite. Fish almost made me lose the GoPro. That fish almost made me lose the GoPro. How about knock the GoPro in the water? So right there you watched me fish some secondary points off the main lake, full of stumps. I was kind of targeting anything with stumps, and then we moved out to kind of a really long shoal that moves out into the main lake that was full of stumps and chunk rock, and that's really what you want to do. And then as far as weight size, just to touch on that a bit, I stay as light as I possibly can, so I use a 1/2 ounce barrel weight. You can go up all the way to an ounce and a half, if you really want to. But really, if I can throw that half ounce, that's what I'm going to do. I seem to just get more bites on that half ounce. Again, if the wind is calling for it, then I go to like a 3/4 or 1 ounce, or if I'm fishing super deep. But really with that half ounce, you can kind of cover them as anything from as shallow as you want to throw it to about 20 foot when, there's not a bunch of wind blowing around the lake. I hope you all enjoyed this. If there's any questions about a Carolina rig, feel free to comment below. I will make sure to answer all questions about a Carolina rig. It's very effective. It's kind of a forgotten about rig, but I really do encourage, go out there, throw it around. You're gonna feel everything. You're gonna catch a lot of fish. It's a numbers bait. It's a quality bait. It's a great bait all around. So thank you guys for tuning in to Bass Journal, and we'll keep you posted with more tips and tackle and podcasts.